Hey everybody. Thanks for attending our first public hearing on the Stratum Community Power that the Energy Aggregation Committee's been working hard at. We're going to give you a good overview. We hope you'll understand how we're trying to improve things for residents and small businesses. And we have a guest speaker here also. So first, welcome, and we're really pleased at the number of people that are here. And the reason we're doing two public hearings is we want to tell you what we're doing, and then we want to hear back from you. And we want to be able to take what you tell us and put it into the plan so it works for everybody. And I believe that what we have for a plan, which is in process now, does address everything that not only the state of New Hampshire wants, but what typical residents want. Let me just tell you, we all consider community power what's called a transformative way to get your power. It's not going to be the way we've done it in the past. It's going to be a vastly improved way, and it's going to allow, right now, 33 towns and cities in the state of New Hampshire to negotiate power rates as a group, which is just terrific. And we're hoping what the coalition that we're heading toward right now is looking at least 50 towns and cities, which is a lot of people. I would say that community power is something that's supported strongly by both the legislature and our governor. And a lot of work has gone into setting this up so towns can set their own community power up. I should tell you first who our committee is. It's basically the same group as our Stratum Energy Commission. Paul Deshane, Joe Anderson, Joe Van Gombos isn't here, he has a new baby. Matt O'Keefe, Mike Welty, and myself, I'm Charlie Case. We've invited Henry Herndon from the Community Power Coalition of New Hampshire to also be a speaker, and he'll follow me. We have populated the Energy Aggregation Committee website with a bunch of information, including a draft of our energy aggregation plan. And so everybody knows we're recording this. We can't do it live, but we will put it up on the website, and it'll be available for viewing, I hope, as early as tomorrow. Okay, let's see. If I can poke this the right direction, we'll be good. So that's the agenda for tonight, and Paul Deshane will be taking care of leading the questions and answers, and I'll be taking notes. So what is the mission that the Board of Selectmen has asked us to do? One of them is to develop an electric aggregation plan in accordance with state law. And our committee's term at the moment is scheduled to sunset on April 1st, 2024. And by that time, we hope to have all the options available to us to start delivering electricity. Yes, sir.
Can you ditch the microphone because
sure. How's this?
We can hear you pretty good.
Okay,
Back down here.
great. So the way this works is two groups, or I should say 3 groups, have to approve of our electric aggregation plan. One of them is you folks at a town meeting. One of them is the Board of Selectmen, and the other one is the New Hampshire Public Utilities Commission. Yeah, okay. It was too loud over here.
Why don't you slide him closer? We're going to forget about that.
All right. Let's try this. Is that better? Okay, we'll do that. So what our plan at the moment is to submit our electric aggregation plan to the Public Utilities Commission before we.
That's not going to work. So I'm going to slide you up here.
Okay.
close to the crowd.
That's good.
With that microphone, we'll be good with the video.
Okay, so let me go again. The order of business, once we get our plan done, which we hope to have within the next month or so, and again, with your inputs, it first goes to the Board of Selectmen, or the Select Board. It next goes to the Public Utilities Commission, and then finally to a town meeting where you all will have an opportunity to vote. Today, we're going to introduce what community power is and our efforts to develop the plan. Well, we have a lot of friends out there who are doing the same thing we are. There are 33 towns that are aligned with the Community Power Coalition of New Hampshire, and 4 more that are aligned with another coalition outfit. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. But we're number 33. There are folks in towns very close to us that already are ahead of us in setting up their community power. Exeter, Rye, Newmarket, Durham, Dover, Portsmouth, and Brentwood. And then they're spread all over the state. And Henry, how many more towns do you anticipate?
We were looking at the list today. There are several dozen more that are actively exploring getting involved right now.
Great. So, why are we doing this? Well, lower rates, and I'm going to give you some data in a minute. Local control of energy choices. In other words, you can decide yourself whether you want to be part of this, whether you want to buy third-party electricity, or just pay the default rate, which is at this point is very high. And we can explain how that became so if you want to know. But it really has nothing to do with Unitil. They're required to negotiate a rate twice a year on a particular day, and that doesn't necessarily mean that they're getting a good deal. In fact, they're generally not. Greater choice is a very important thing. We think everybody needs to be able to do that. And finally, clean energy, and I'm going to give you a little piece of data. Clean energy doesn't mean that it costs more. The town put a large solar array on top of the police station. It has generated as of today, it's generated 210,000 kilowatt hours since 2019. If you compare the rate that we are now paying, because we bought it, it was funded on our power purchase agreement. If you compare that with the default rate today, we've saved the town $35,000 just since 2019. So the message that I see is you can have clean energy and a lower cost all at the same time. So let me keep going. Important. All the funding for this comes from ratepayers, not taxpayers. The only money we're going to spend of town money to get there is a little bit of David's time, the town attorney, very small amount of money to make sure we're not sending Stratum into a legal dilemma. So we've been appreciative of their help so far. Now, if you have Unitil's default rate and you like it, you're welcome to keep it. But you will automatically be part of Stratum Community Power initially, because everybody on the default rate will be. But you can opt out, and you can do that, I believe, with a phone call. It's very simple. If you receive power from one of the alternate providers, and I believe there are either 5 or 6 third-party suppliers, which I think you can find how to do that on the website. You will not be included unless you ask to be. That's the opt-in piece. I don't know how many people have contracted with a third-party supplier. I have, because I didn't want to pay 25.9 cents a kilowatt hour, but as soon as we come online with Stratum Community Power, which we anticipate being next April at the earliest, then I will certainly join up with that. Unitil doesn't generate any electricity. What they provide is wires and all the infrastructure necessary to do that. They will also provide all the billing services, and that's part of their effort. Okay. Now, this is interesting. Municipalities have always been able to aggregate with other municipalities, and we've done that with the Rockingham Planning Commission, I think since 2018, and we've saved the town, interestingly enough, in the first 3-year contract, we've saved $27,000 for the town by being in a group of 6 towns or parts of 6 towns. For the next, we're into the second 3-year contract, and we know what the savings will be through the end of July, and that'll be another $24,000. So aggregation works too. That's the point I think I would want to make. And I talked about the savings on the solar power that we have put on the police station, which is really exciting. Okay, this is an interesting chart. We've talked to a lot of folks originally as part of the Stratum Energy Commission. We've looked at third-party brokers, and I'll just tell you that they're for profit. Sometimes they can undercut a nonprofit, which is, for example, CPCNH. Do they help us set up community power? The answer is no. Can they provide renewable power? Yes. Do they have any innovative solutions? The answer is no. But their renewable power, and I'm familiar with at least the one I'm using, doesn't build solar. And what it does is it adds to the cost by contracting with, one of them is Texas Wind. It's a big outfit and in Texas. And in fact, most of the third-party brokers are based in Texas. And to get renewable power, what they do is they pay extra money to Texas Wind for what's called renewable energy credits. That's the name. So while they say renewable power, they're really not building renewable power. They're just simply paying extra money to Texas Wind to get credits. We've talked to an outfit called Good Energy Standard Power. They're the ones that have 4 community power cities and towns out in the western part of New Hampshire. They're for profit also. Would they help us set up community power? Did they help those 4 towns? Yes, the answer is yes. Do they have renewable power? They do have some options that are not renewable energy credit type renewable power. Do they have real innovative solutions? And the answer is no, and we can talk about that, but I'll just give you an example. In an aggregation with other towns, we could, for example, for a relatively low cost, join up with other towns that are in the Unitil district, and they're all in the south, pretty much in the southeast part of the state. If we could, as a group, find land that's perfect for a large solar farm, we could do that and be part of that. And again, all of the funding for that would come out of rates. And again, if we did the same, if we were able to do the same thing we did on the police station with a power purchase agreement, that would be no money up front, and towns would end up paying it back slowly. And then finally, CPCNH, Community Power Coalition of New Hampshire, is a nonprofit. It's controlled by the member towns. Right now, we are a member. We are not obliged to buy anything from CPCNH until we sign what's called a cost-sharing agreement, which would have to be done after all the approvals, and it would be done by the select board. Do they have renewable power? Yes, right now they're buying RECs, just like the third-party brokers, but that's not their general approach. Their general approach is to have an aggregation of towns and cities to build renewable power systems themselves. And they have innovative solutions, and I think I mentioned there are lots of other ways that we can get innovative solutions as part of this. And again, it's member controlled. At least 14 municipalities have started, and they're generating, they're buying power. I think at least 10 of them or 12 of them are part of CPCNH. And again, there are 4 in the western part of the state that have joined up with Standard Power. And just the real benefit is community power allows the town, through an aggregator, to control the purchase of electricity, which we've never been able to do before as residents. So, what can you guys do, and the rest of the residents in town? And that is, let me just go back to here. Well, get informed, and you're here today, and we want to hear from you. We want to hear what your thoughts are. What can we do to make this even better? As I said, the electric aggregation, energy aggregation committee is well on the way to preparing our electric aggregation plan, which is required by the state as part of this statute. We expect to present it to the Stratham Select Board sometime in July. And then after that, we will submit it to the Public Utilities Commission. We will have one more public hearing. We're required to have 2, and we're thrilled that we have this many people here. We will also have, prior to a town meeting where we want to vote, we will have more information sessions, at least one. And if we get through that and we're ready to launch Stratham Community Power, there will be a lot of information either mailed to you or other information sessions. We haven't worked all those details out, but there are a number of mailings that are required by the statute, so nobody's left behind. If you, just as a comment, if you're a low-income user, the rules that you've been following all along will still be there. If you have solar on your home right now, that will be accommodated as well, in the same way it is today. So, I'm going to ask Henry Herndon, who's from Community Power of New Hampshire, to stand up, and I'm going to give him the...
Hello, my name is Henry Herndon. It's good to be here with all of you. I am here on behalf of Community Power Coalition of New Hampshire. This is a new nonprofit that was formed just a year and a half ago by New Hampshire cities and towns to take advantage of this new legislation in a way that is maximizing benefit for cities and towns, so we have accountability to communities, to our local select boards, and we can really control the benefits and we can control the revenues from our collective power purchases to expand benefits across the community. So I'm glad to be here in Stratham. It's a really exciting time, just as the first 12 programs have just sort of turned on their community power programs this spring right now, and they're saving 20% on their energy supply costs from what they were paying Unitil. Well, Unitil, it's actually 40% savings because Unitil has some of the highest rates in the state right now, but 20 to 40% savings on the supply portion of the bill. And just a lot of excitement about how this can really be a big beneficial change for the state. So I'm going to talk about a number of things, and I'll summarize this electric aggregation plan, which under the statute is what you all would vote to approve at your town meeting should you choose to move forward with Stratham Community Power and the associated benefits. So our table of contents, we'll talk about how community power works, we'll talk about the electric aggregation plan, we'll talk about the coalition, CPCNH, and then we'll talk about sort of your timeline, and happy to get into Q&A and discussion as well. So to give context, community power, broadly speaking, allows a town to pool the energy buying power of its residents and businesses, achieve an economy of scale, to lower electric costs and to achieve other benefits. Also, it's about expanding access to renewable energy on a sort of customer-by-customer choice basis. An individual customer could choose to buy more renewable power if they wanted to do that. And the legislation that makes this possible is RSA 53E, relative to aggregation of electric customers. And when I say electric aggregation or community power, these are the same thing. It's just grouping our electricity purchases together to get an economy of scale to have buying power. And really what the New Hampshire legislature intended when they made this possible in 2019 and then adjusting it in 2021 was local control. How can we let cities and towns in the state have more flexibility locally to have a say in where they're buying their power from, how they're buying their power, how they can access energy markets, and get the benefits associated with that market competition. So it's really focused on bringing it down to the community level in terms of decision making for electricity. So what is community power? What this legislation does is it allows a town like Stratham or any other town in the state to become what we call the default electricity supplier. Sort of three pieces to this. So first there's that bulk buy, where together the residents and businesses pool their buying power and they can get better access to rates. Importantly, Unitil, and I'm not sure, is there any Eversource territory in Stratham as well?
Yes, there is.
Gotcha. So Eversource or Unitil, they will continue to own the poles and wires, they'll own the grid, they'll send the bill to the customer. Their role remains the same. They continue to be in charge of making sure the grid is reliable. What's different is now the community gets to choose who they're buying the power from that then flows over Unitil's grid. So that stays the same. And then the third piece is sort of the benefits that can come for the customers. There's lower rates. We're seeing the Unitil rate. Right now it's 26 cents for energy supply alone. That's leaving off the poles and wires. And just down the road in Exeter, they just switched the community into a 15.8 cent rate. So knocking 10 cents off their rate, just like that, saving $40 a month per customer through this program. And that will change as the rates change every 6 months, but there is an advantage to community power in many ways. A couple of important points. Any customer, this is not a mandatory program, this is a completely voluntary program. Any customer can choose whether or not they want to participate in it or buy from a different third-party option selling electricity or buy from Unitil. So it's voluntary. And Charlie mentioned these as well, but I'll just reiterate. Under the law, the taxpayer funds, Stratham taxpayer funds, cannot be used to pay for the cost of this program. We all pay an electric bill. In that electric bill, you know, it's sort of broken out into a number of different things, but on the supply side, a small portion of that rate the customer pays will pay for through power supply program costs, whether that's through Unitil, through a third party, or through Community Power Coalition. It's paid for on your electric bill, not through taxpayer funds. Some of the benefits, we've talked about these: local control, lower costs, the ability to contract with local energy sources or to develop your own energy projects. So, you know, Stratham's been a leader in installing solar panels at the police station to lower costs for the municipality. This is a way to sort of scale that to a community scale and do the same kind of thing, but now to provide that power to the collective residents and businesses instead of just the police station. And then there's a lot of other exciting innovations. There are opportunities to use these programs to improve things like customers who maybe want to install new technology, electric vehicle charging or battery storage or rooftop solar, and use those customer devices in a way that actually benefits the whole Stratham portfolio. Lower peak usage, lower peak cost. That's a little more down the line, but that is something that's really built into the value over the next 3 to 5 years. Written into the draft plan for Stratham is protections to ensure that the program will only launch. It is able to initially offer residential rates that are lower than Unitil. So, they're sort of building in that protection where you won't start Stratum Community Power unless you have rate savings for customers. So let's talk a little bit about our electric bills. Our electric bills are broken in half into two portions. We have the delivery side of the bill, it's the Unitil side of the bill. It's called electric service for Unitil, and it says delivery charge. Is there a laser pointer here? So right here. And then this is what you pay to Unitil for their various poles and wires charges, more or less. The other side of the bill is supplier service. This, right now, somebody's shopping with ABC Energy Company. This is, that's just a made-up name, right? Okay. But it could be anyone. It could be default Unitil supply, which is just, many of us probably don't make a decision. Maybe raise your hand if you choose a different electricity supplier on your bill. Does anybody? Oh, a couple of us do. So many of us are familiar with this, and you shop in the market and you can maybe get better rates than Unitil. So the concept is the same, but now instead of having Unitil being the default, there's a new and separate default, Stratum Community Power, that is a more competitive default instead of Unitil. And then again, the other side of the bill, it's the same thing, just the delivery charges here, that's Unitil. The only thing that would change from the customer perspective after this program launches, and we'll talk about what the process is whoever your supplier is, it would now say Community Power or Stratum Community Power. Okay, so I'm going to summarize some key points. Again, there's a process here, and it starts with public hearings and some of the approvals Charlie talked about, but we're going to fast forward to imagine we've gone through all the approvals. At that point in time, every customer would receive a mailed letter that says, "Welcome to Stratum Community Power." You can opt out by going to this website or calling this phone number or emailing this email address. But for the customers that are on the Unitil Power and they make no action, they would be automatically enrolled into this new program after 30 days into a lower price as this new Stratum Community Power default supply. I mentioned this voluntary. Customers can choose not to participate before the enrollment date and just they won't be enrolled, or at any point after the enrollment date and the next monthly bill cycle, they'll be switched to whoever their other choice would be. Unitil continues to own the grid, supply the power, and the customers, those of you who raised your hand because you already shopped for power, this does not affect you. You would get the letter. It would say everything that it says, and included in it, it would say if you shop for a third-party supply option, if you already choose somebody to buy power from, you're welcome to join if you'd like, but otherwise nothing happens. So it doesn't affect customers that are already shopping on their own. And I mentioned there's no taxpayer funds associated. Okay, so the plan. And this is provided for under this RSA 53E. They have a sort of clear public process that a town would have to go through to approve and launch a program. It starts with the select board establishing the committee, which they have done, committee drafting a plan, which they have done, and that plan details sort of what I'm explaining here, and then some of the goals and how the program operates and complies with the state law. And then the legislation requires 2 public hearings. This is the first, and the second will be on June 22nd. The plan lays out goals and objectives. It makes clear who is responsible for what between the board of selectmen, the committee, and otherwise. There are certain legal requirements that it has to meet. There's a minimum amount of renewable energy required by the state. Right now it's 23% about. So it commits to complying with state laws. And as Charlie mentioned, it addresses certain details like some customers have, does anyone have solar panels in net meter? Some of us have installed solar. It addresses how those customers would be included. And same for low-income qualifying customers. There is an electric assistance program that helps income-qualified folks with electricity costs. They will continue to receive those benefits. And importantly, the plan does not commit Stratum to taking any action. It's sort of, if the town meeting approves it, it authorizes the select board to take action, but it doesn't require them to do so, and it doesn't impose a financial commitment on the town. This is just an outline of the chapters, and is it posted on the website as of now? So a draft version is available on the town website as well. But it's fairly concise. It just sort of, a lot of what we're discussing here, an introduction, an overview, the goals and objectives, and then what is legally required. And then there are some appendices about, more details on our nonprofit power agency, net metering, and some details of how we comply with sort of other market requirements and customer data protection. So getting to the notification process, again, if we go through a town meeting and the select board decides to move forward because the rates are favorable, this is just an example of the Nashua letter. Stratum would, we work with Stratum to sort of customize Stratum Community Power's branding and message, and all customers would receive a letter that looks something like this effect, explaining to the customers, here's how the program works, here's our rates, here's how it compares to Unitil, here's everything you need to know if you want to go to communitypowernh.gov and learn more or opt out, or if you want to call 1-866-603-POWER, that's our customer service line, and learn about the program or make a decision, buy more green power, opt out, opt in. So just to unpack that a little more, again, that's 30 days in advance of any enrollment. Every single electric customer receives that letter in the mail, or that letter is mailed to every customer. And there's very clear instructions on how they can make their different decisions. I have the website here, the email address here, and the phone number. So I definitely encourage folks to go and look at some of those 12 programs, Exeter and Rye. They're up and running, and you can see them at this website, communitypowernh.gov. I mentioned competitive supply customers can opt in if they would like, and there's never any penalty for coming or going or switching. This is showing the current rates that these 12 communities just started, and I apologize, this is Eversource instead of Unitil, but if this said Unitil, then this would be 26 cents, so it'd actually be considerably higher. And these are the rates that are offered through Community Power in the other towns presently, with the basic being a 15.8 cent rate that is also effective through the same date the utility rates are effective. So Unitil and Eversource, they change their electric rate every 6 months, on August 1 and on February 1. And what we can do with Community Power is we can actually, will depend on your provider, but what the coalition can do is compete directly with that and adjust rates as the utilities adjust rates in order to maintain the discount. So that's why our rates are effective through July 31st, and you all are in a good position where 12 towns have gone, they've proven they got lower rates for the first period. We're going to set another rate this June or July, starting August 1, and you can all take a look at that and see how that continues to perform relative to Unitil. So I'm sure your committee will keep a close eye on that. But I mentioned some of this, for a couple of the towns, it's an average of 26 bucks a month. Really, I should have Exeter here because it's like $40 a month for Exeter customers. Okay, so the coalition. This is, again, Charlie had a similar material, but this is a community-governed power company or power agency. So, sort of I'll try to do the long story in a short way, but back when the law got passed in 2019, a handful of cities and towns that were really at the forefront of this got together, and they looked at how does this work in Massachusetts, how does it work in California, how does it work in the other states that have done this, what's the best model? And what they learned was the most effective model was when cities and towns came together, and rather than sort of each individually just hiring a broker to sell them some power, they could form their own power company, essentially. Centralize those services on a statewide basis, public agency, subject to right to know law, and set it up in a way where the communities control the governance and the finances and the revenues from our power sales. So the mission statement of the coalition is to foster resilient New Hampshire communities by empowering them to realize their energy goals. In October of 2021, this nonprofit was incorporated for the first time with 14 cities and towns. Since more than doubled, the membership has grown to 33, and that's about 23% of the state's population represented. The 12 communities that are launching represent 75,000 customers and considerable scale. So there's a lot of buying power there. And again, importantly, the revenues of those electricity sales are controlled by the participating communities through this nonprofit power agency. This year, the board met in April, adopted their sort of first operating budget as they're selling power for the first time this April, May, June. And the nonprofit will be responsible for $51 million in revenues for this year. And 10 to 12 of that will be financial reserves, will be the net profit that is sort of squirreled away in a reserve fund for long-term customer benefits. Again, revenues that are controlled by the participating member communities. So Stratum and the remaining communities are all sort of on track to launch, potentially later this year or springtime next year and thereafter. So it's, there's the first 12, and this is something that is going to spread very quickly across the state. This is the board of directors of the coalition. So there are 20 individuals. Those 33 towns that got together in April, they elected 20 of them to the board of directors. Again, volunteer community governance. So we have city councilors, folks from select boards, municipal managers, volunteers on energy committees, individuals who have been utility executives or had careers founding energy companies. So there's a lot of breadth and depth of expertise and volunteer capacity from across communities that have come together to create this nonprofit company, and this is them. So we had a board meeting this morning. We actually had a membership meeting and a board meeting this morning, and a risk management committee meeting this morning. But there's a lot of, the point is there's a breadth and depth of talent on the volunteer governance level for the organization. Also, the organization hired its first chief executive officer, sort of employee number 1. He started this week. We're all very excited, but Brian Kalman was selected from a nationally competitive search. He was a former vice president at the New Hampshire Electric Co-op, where he managed that nonprofit utilities power procurements. He's now heading up the staff for the coalition, and he's got a lot of leadership in buying power, utility scale power, but also developing some of the innovative solutions Charlie talked about. So we can save customers money by investing in local clean energy sources like the Stratum Police Station has proven. But there's sort of like, we're beginning to really move into this area of distributed energy and something we call virtual power plants sometimes, but he was a leader at the co-op for programs where you have a time of use electric rate. You have folks with batteries or devices in the home that are on a time of use rate. That customer can really reduce their energy cost in that fashion, but it's also a way to reduce our overall portfolio of energy costs. So he's been a real leader on sort of pushing forward on innovation and innovative solutions for customers. So exciting development. We talked about community volunteer governance that is then supported by really deep professional expertise on a vendor level. So I won't get into all of these firms, but this is sort of the back end of what is required to manage utility scale power company. There's a procurement in the wholesale electricity market. So this is our energy portfolio management vendor. They are responsible for advising on how and when to purchase power in the ISO New England wholesale market. We have retail customer services. So, there's a contact center, there's a call center, there's customer service reps. We have to exchange, billing data and customer usage data with the utility company. This all happens behind the scenes, but these are the firms that are responsible for this on behalf of Community Power Coalition, and they were selected in 2022 after this very intensive competitive solicitation and vetting process. And they're firms that have really demonstrated their ability in the broader national market. I won't get into everybody here, but legal, banking, and revenue controls, etc. And again, just what is perhaps more relevant for us in Stratum is the support to develop a program and a plan, and also to conduct public outreach and education. It's great. This is a fantastic showing for a public hearing. I rarely see this many folks show up to the first public hearing, so I'm really pleased to have you all. But we want to get the word out further. So, frequently asked questions, materials, public information sessions, working with Stratum to develop its own sort of, its own logo and messaging to make sure folks are informed about this before they get that letter in the mail. And I think this is sort of towards the end, and I'm really excited to get to Q&A and discuss with you all, but implementation-wise, we've discussed this a little bit. Stratum has joined the coalition. They're a member. They have a vote just like every other member does in membership meetings. And the board has established its committee. So now we're in sort of the committee research and planning phase and developing its plan through public hearings. We will go to a town meeting. There will be a warrant article, and you all can say whether or not you want to do Stratum Community Power or make it available to your neighbor. And then the Board of Selectmen can go through the contracting steps to launch the program. And I think that's it, and I'm happy to move into questions and answers. Thank you.
You're not off the hot seat just yet. But I'm just going to manage the Q&A. Hopefully, let's deal first with the presentations and that material. And once we get through that, then we have a couple questions for you relative to the plan itself. So if you have a question, if you can raise your hand, perhaps stand up. I'll try to repeat the question so that the recording understands or can hear the question, and hopefully I can summarize it real well, and then we'll find someone to answer it. Yes, sir.
Stratum Green Condominiums here at Stratum has a solar array, and the array is connected to a group net metering of 19 meters that the association uses for the infrastructure, water, sewage, and things like that. The individual homeowners are not part of that. It's the association that is. How will this impact our effort with solar? How will it cost us more? Will it affect our relationship with Unitil? What can we expect with that?
I believe the question is, in a generalized sense, if you have solar, how is that going to change, if it's going to change at all, your relationship with Unitil? And in your particular case, in Stratum Green's case, you have a community solar program going on that's subsidizing your community electric usage. So is that going to affect that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So in your particular instance, you have a group host. The host is the solar array. They're generating power, and they're an account. They would not necessarily enroll into community power. They might stay net metering with Unitil. And if it's if it's a higher rate for the solar array, putting power on the grid, it could be more lucrative. All your individual residents in the association, they can do whatever they want, but they would be automatically enrolled in Stratum Community Power and could still benefit from the group net metering arrangement. So the host might stay with Unitil, but the customers who are not themselves physically net metering, they would be enrolled and benefit from the program.
Thank you.
Henry, if you could also, and I don't mean to get really deep into the weeds, but as you said, this is the first round of customers enrolling in the program, and one of the humps has been net metering. Yeah. Would you want to elaborate a little bit on that?
Thank you. Yeah. So the state law and regulations and our electric aggregation plans all make clear that net metered customers are all welcome to join in the benefits of community power as well. On this first launch in the 12 towns, we are not on launch enrolling net metered customers. And that's not because we don't want to, we absolutely do want to serve them. It's because of a technical issue in data sharing with utilities. We sort of have 95% of the data we need from utilities to provide service. One omission, one piece of data utilities haven't quite figured out how to share yet is how much extra power net metered customers put on the grid each month.
I'm
So,
sorry, just to follow up on what you just brought up now. So does that mean if the 60 residents were actually part of this group net metering effort that exists right now, they would not be able to take part of the community power at this time?
no. So with group net metering, it only applies to the host meter. All the group members, they're just like any other customer for a community power's consideration. They can participate.
I'm sorry, so the host that you're referring to is a meter, but in the background there are all the members.
That's right.
At the moment, we have 19. That's the streetlights, the sewage, the water.
Right.
But if the...
And do they have a separate meter?
Yes.
Yep, so that customer's meter is an account, and it would be enrolled in the program as any other customer would be.
That's,
I think I understand this.
Well, I just want to finish.
I might be able to add to that.
Sure.
Mike, you have 19 meters that is to run the ComEd.
well, the
And then
infrastructure.
the infrastructure. All of them are on the net metering.
Yes,
Yours, Murph, any of the other residents down there are not.
true.
So you, Murph, everybody else would be able to go into the community power. The infrastructure at this time is the only one that's on net metering, and that's the one that they haven't figured out that little computer glitch in.
I don't need to take up more time than I'm entitled to, but you raised a question that's very important now. So the way the group net metering works is there's one host, and in the background, there are 19 other meters that are part of the group. They're called members. So what you just said a moment ago is because they're members and they have their own account numbers, they would not then be part of the group net metering
Yeah.
that
So-
exists.
So the issue is, let's take group net metering out of it for a second, but the host or the net metered customer, if that customer puts more power on the grid than they consume in a month, let's say they consume 500 units, but they produce 600 units. There's 100 exported to the grid. That is the missing data piece that we don't get. So that's the one challenge is for the host, how much excess are you putting on the grid? So the host, in your case, would stay with Unitil and continue to operate exactly as you operate now, but all of those individual other meters, they can enroll and receive the benefits, and your host still gets the proper accounting for its net meter through Unitil. We can follow up, maybe we can follow up after and continue the conversation. Yeah.
I think the situation you're describing is a little bit unique relative to net metering. So I think, yeah, a more one-on-one discussion would help. Roger?
Yeah, Roger Stevenson. Two questions, maybe one for Paul, one for Henry. The first, is the language for the warrant article written in statute in the RSA, or is that something that you're going to write? Is it the same warrant article language that other towns have used? So that's one question. The second question, I guess, following on, do individual homeowners with solar get enrolled automatically?
The first question goes to, what's the draft language for the warrant article? And I think it's pretty standard, is it not?
It's not in the statute, but it's pretty standard and it's, yeah.
It's going to be on the recommendation by
Right.
CPC.
And there's proven models from the several surrounding towns.
Right. Obviously, there'll be legal counsel reviewing it before and everything.
Do you think this would go select board recommends this, or would we need a citizen petition?
No, the board, I think, has to adopt the plan, and in adopting the plan, it needs to then forward it to town meeting, so it would recommend based on that vote. Your second question again, I forgot now?
Do individual homeowners with solar and net metering, are they automatically enrolled?
If you have an individual meter with an individual solar, are they enrolled, is the question, I think.
As of right now, no, they are not. The mailer says if you're an individual net metered customer, you will not be automatically enrolled. We want to enroll you, sit tight while we work out the technical issue with the utility companies, and we'll enroll you later on when we've solved that technical issue.
Although I will say, Unitil has been a little more helpful in resolving that issue than the other utilities, have they not? Or am I over-characterizing?
Well, we haven't solved this specific issue yet, but Unitil has been quite collaborative in a number of areas.
Hi, Scott Longwell. You can hear me better. You had mentioned in your presentation, Charlie, I think, that you were making a distinction a little bit between renewable energy that was from like Texas wind that really wasn't causing any new renewable sources to be brought online versus what you really wanted to encourage, which was new solar, new something. How much of that is baked into the plan you're putting in, or is that, so if your choice is 100% renewable and it's all Texas wind renewable, is that going to be okay, or are you really going to try and make new renewable sources available with your renewable suppliers?
I understand your question is, how renewable is renewable energy?
Right.
And how do you define that? And I will defer to Charlie, but in the latter half of this, I'm going to have a handout, and that's going to be a discussion we're going to have about the plan itself.
So the answer is, there's a portion of this coalition that hasn't been stood up yet, and it's called the project portion of it. And that's a whole separate discussion about, for example, does Stratum want to get together with 10 other towns that are part of the Unitil family here and figure out how to share a new real renewable installation, like a solar farm. That's one of the innovative possibilities that this coalition can provide. We aren't at that point yet, exactly how that can work. It's obvious to me from the police station example that we have, if that's the right answer, you can have a lower cost and you can have true additional renewable energy. Are we there yet? No. And I just see that as an option that the CPCNH is really trying to work with, and they just aren't there.
So phase one is really about cost, and you'll get some renewable in like a next phase or something.
That's right. Now, it's possible that the coalition will figure out how to actually connect up with, I'll make this up, with water power. You know, it's not clear how that's all going to work yet.
Thanks.
Anyone else on this? I want to make sure I get this side of the room as much as that side of the room.
Lester Cup, Stratum Heights Road. The question, first I want to give a hands out to the energy committee. I support this 100%. I have a question about the town is going to be voting on this proposal. And I saw a lot of, we need to follow state regulation, et cetera, this, that, for it to come true. My concern is if the voters are going to be voting on that, is the possibility of also going back and looking at the codes that were set up for solar back then, in that some of those codes restricted us where we can't follow the state regulation. Okay, as far as the size of the layout, as far as what we could put it on. I would hope that if we're going to vote about this big program, we would also look at some of the codes that were established by the selectmen back then that I consider mortgaged our future going forward. That if we really want to get engaged with this program, that I would like to see the town, the knowledge, what these things are actually doing, the existing codes, et cetera, presented so the public can vote understanding what, you know, what is there. Because right now I still feel that there's some restrictions. There has been some changes, but we still have, we're so far behind some of these other towns as far as what they allow versus what we don't allow.
Leslie, if I understand your question, you're supportive of the aggregation proposal and the plan being proposed, and it's great that it's going to be sent to a town meeting vote, but you want to know if other relative energy, renewable energy codes are going to be addressed by the town. That is a separate discussion that has to occur in the zoning and building code discussions. So that involves the planning board and those sort of things. So it's really an independent analysis and discussion that has to occur, but certainly can occur, and in the context of if there's a large support for a renewable portion of this aggregation plan, I think that would show general support for perhaps revisiting solar and other renewable codes that are existing today. So I don't know if anyone else needs to add that.
That's not what I meant. I heard you say something about a larger project or something.
Yes, that, just pretend for the moment that we found a field the size of the scan in town XYZ, and 10 towns got together and said, okay, we're going to start a project, which is it's a next step, and we're going to share the costs, out of our rates, we're going to share the costs out of our revenues, and we're going to share that over a period of time. That's a different problem, I think, but it might be the same issue. Maybe these towns that I'm thinking of are not going to allow what the state allows is a 5 megawatt installation, but that's something, that piece of it we do need to look at. The other piece of the puzzle is the issues that the town has that we've set up, that have been set up, regulations. The town planner did come and meet with the Stratton Energy Commission just a few weeks ago and said, hey, I think we need to set up a group, or let's call it a subcommittee, with somebody from the Energy Commission, somebody from the Conservation Commission, somebody from the Planning Board, et cetera. And I think there were 4 or 5. And we have nominated one of our members to be part of that. But the town planner said, hey, we need to figure out how to encourage what we want to encourage, and maybe get rid of some of the, or simplify some of the rules that are out there. And I think it would do us all great service if you reminded us, and maybe to the town planner, what are all the things that have been getting in the way in the last 5 years for you? Because to me, you want to do those things.
Yeah, well, I consider any problem an opportunity.
Yes.
Okay, and I see a lot of opportunity, and the example you gave of towns pulling together a big project, Stratton has what, 30-some% of farmland under conservation. We are in a great position of being able to, if we do decide to put something across towns, to be right there up front, because we got the space, but we don't have the code right now. You know, the state has moved on as far as what's this and that. And this says, hey, we're going to follow state code, but hell, we're not even following it now.
Again, I think we're getting a little far afield from the
Well,
plan.
I would like to see that part of the discussion and recommendation.
We had another, yeah, we'll come back to you, right, okay, thank you.
Yeah, Franklin Source is down the road. With all these communities joining forces to buy power, okay, it's in my mind that it seems like Unitil is going to lose revenue. Is that correct?
I believe the question is, if we all move from Unitil to this project, will Unitil suffer financially from that decision? Henry, short answer is no, but go ahead.
That's a good question. I'm just going to go back to the bill to talk about it. So it's a good question, and the answer is no. And that's because Unitil makes all of its revenue on delivery, which is this part of the bill here, which is the poles and wires and the meter and all of the infrastructure. So that's going to stay the same. They're always going to have the grid. That's where they make all of their money. Right now, they don't make any revenue on energy supply. They just, every 6 months, buy it for one price in the market and sell it to the customer for the same price, and they pass it through the customer. So it doesn't matter to them if it's their default supply. It doesn't matter if you go shop with a third party. It doesn't matter if you do community power. They're still going to get paid for the grid, which is their business.
Just to follow on, so Unitil is not marking up the supply. They're just passing it through. They're not making any markup on it.
That is correct. They pay for their administrative cost of running a bid and picking a supplier and having some staff do that, but there's no revenue and they're not marking it up.
Yeah, my name is Nick Sweat. I was just curious on the structure of this. In other words, you have the primary structure, then you've got all these towns that are underneath it. Some of these towns are of different sizes, different populations. Is there any, are they all equal in a vote to the coalition? And do they also, some have larger populations than others? Does some benefit from being a larger population or a smaller population?
I believe your question goes to the governance of CPCNH and whether there's any weighted voting or something of that because of the customer size.
Yeah, great question. Let's see. So there are essentially, like we have a town meeting and a board of selectmen here, there's sort of a legislative body, which is your town meeting, all the voters, and then there's a governing body, which is the board of selectmen. So the legislative body is the members. All of these members meet 3 or more times a year to do certain business and to elect the board of directors, the governing body. So every member has an equal vote in an election for the board of directors. The board of directors, there is 20 seats on the board of directors. So not every town is represented on the board. Stratham is not on the board right now, but at the next annual meeting, if you wanted to put somebody forward for that election, you could elect somebody from Stratham to sit on the board. The board meets monthly or more regularly in some cases. And if you're a big city like Nashua or you're a small town like Harrisville, New Hampshire, 900 people, one member, one vote. So there's no weighted voting in terms of your size. So every one of these 20 individuals representing the towns and sort of now more broadly representing their region and representing the other communities has one vote. And just to sort of expand on this a little more, the CPCNH doesn't tell a member town what kind of power it's buying. CPCNH is a service provider, and this town maybe wants to buy this kind of power, and this town maybe wants to do that kind of project. And CPCNH is just made to service the different towns' needs. It doesn't dictate to the town what the town is going to buy or do. So anyone who's not on the board, they're still going to get equal service as any other member. And yeah, so I think that's an important point.
Okay.
Vic
I just wanted to stand up.
Just to follow up on what you said, it sounded like, at least what I thought I heard, that the community group helps towns to buy power. It also sounds like every town can pay a different amount of money for their power. So what is the benefit of one town, we'll just say, for example, of us, getting power for 20 cents, if you will, the next town old X is getting it for 15 cents. So how does a community help when everybody's paying different power? Why isn't everybody getting the absolute lowest power all around? Different rates for different towns don't seem to make sense.
Your question appears to be if there's that possibility of customized power delivery town by town does that mean there's going to be different rates town by town, and therefore, doesn't that defeat the community power premise?
40 towns
Right.
together, buying one big low
And
rate.
actually, that's a great question, as we hopefully will begin to segue into our plan in a minute, but I'll let Henry answer that question first.
Yeah, so the answer is, right now, all the 12 towns have the same rate options, and that's where we're at launch. And then the shorter, sort of longer-term answer is, some towns might choose to voluntarily go in together on one project here, but other towns might not want to go in on that project. They may have different goals. But a key, like, one example, so right now, of those 12 towns, 9 of them have this Granite Basic is what everybody gets enrolled into. 23% renewable energy, 15.8 cents, lowest cost. 3 of the towns, Hanover, Peterborough, Plainfield, they dropped everybody into 33% renewable power and 16.2 cents for their rate. So, because they're clean energy minded and they want the default that everybody gets switched to do this. Any customer in Hanover can choose to go down to a little bit cheaper, but if you make no choice, this is your default. So that's an example of, one town might say, we want everybody to be in more renewable power, and another town might say, we want everybody to be in a cheaper price. Does that answer your question? Because I think you're right, you're exactly right. Right now, for the vast majority, it is one rate, and it is even options, but there's some flexibility and customization.
Thank you.
That's why each town has its own plan.
Who in the town decides, who in the town decides to pick what rate, what?
The board, the select board, well, you could customize this in your plan, but the select board gets to say which of these, but they're, on behalf of the community and voters.
Thank you.
Go ahead, yes.
Is it the select board that elects the members, proposes the member to the board of directors?
Yeah, they propose, I guess, a candidate.
Yes.
They identify a member representative, so every town has 1 or 2 member representatives. The select board says, you're our member representative. It's Paul and Charlie in this case. They attended our annual membership meeting and they voted in the election. And the board of selectmen could pick somebody to put themselves forward for that election to sit on the board.
But the membership elects the board of
The
directors.
membership elects the board. So if Paul shows up on behalf of Stratum to our membership meeting, he's the one voting for the slate of board candidates.
And are the board of directors, are those paid positions?
They're not. They're a volunteer.
They're all volunteer. Okay, thank you.
Any first timers? Yes.
Hi, Karen Cushing, Butterfield Lane. I'm on a third-party power supplier right now, and I'm locked into a year rate. For a whole year I have this one rate. So this goes into effect next year. Okay, say you all decide April 30th is the rate, the deadline, right? My thing doesn't end until May, okay? So can I opt in May, or can you only opt in that one time, say April 30th?
I think your question is, if I have a third party and I'm under a contract,
Right.
what are my rights or abilities or options to
opt
choose?
in,
Right.
If I find that your rate now is less than what I'm paying, and does that fluctuate? Because right now, I have a set rate for 12 months.
Yeah, so you can wait until that rate expires, and if Stratum Community Power is already online and you miss the first enrollment, you can just opt in next time. You can just opt in as soon as your rate expires. So the choice is always with the customer, and you can opt in. You could say you want to cancel that rate, and maybe there's a cancellation fee, so you want to be careful about that. You can cancel it and opt in. You could wait till it expires, and then you could opt in. And the timing factor is whenever you make an opt decision, it will become effective on the date, the monthly date the utility reads your meter for your monthly bill.
Correct. But then how long is your just for example, okay, say you're 10 cents,
Mhm.
okay? I'm 15 cents,
Right.
you're 10 cents.
We don't have a term, we don't have a
That's what I
cancellation
was
fee.
gonna say, you don't have a cancellation.
No.
But that 10 cents is good for how long? I mean, is it good until,
So right now, we're on a 6-month rate setting
6
cycle.
months,
So we will announce new rates on, I think, June 30th, which will go into effect on August 1st
yes,
through January 31. So we'll have 6-month rate periods, and that's because Unitil has a 6-month rate
Yeah.
period. And we're basically gonna see what Unitil does, and then we're gonna provide a discount relative to that.
okay.
And remember,
That's the objective.
this is kind of a startup operation at the moment, so they're working at the 6-month interval because
That
that's
may-
what
that may
everyone
evolve.
else has been doing.
Right.
Eventually, as more towns get involved and more experience is had and greater rate classifications are designed, then I think they'll be able to expand for
That's right.
longer periods of time.
That's right.
But so this is a learning curve to a degree.
I just wanted to know if I was able, I didn't, like, there's a cutoff date, and
No.
then I wasn't allowed until the next, date.
No, it's not like Medicare.
No cutoff dates and no cancellation fees.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Any other first timers? Not, we'll go seconds.
Thanks, going well. This one, question about the police station, which you mentioned a few times, where they put solar on their roof. I guess they didn't buy the solar, they're sort of paying the installer for the energy, and then they have the option to buy it. I think that's what your newsletter said. Is there going to be anything in this plan that would help homeowners do a similar thing? I mean, I've been approached by, the guys who drive up and knock on your door and say, hey, we'll put it on for free, and of course it's gonna be wonderful, but I don't know how much I trust them, right? So, but if you guys were backing it, I'd say, hey, it's Stroud, it's gotta be good, right? So, because that's something you're thinking about doing, which is helping people take advantage of that solar panel lease or whatever it's called.
To synthesize, as I understand your question, is will Stratum possibly offer individual solar options to its residents, much like we did for the town itself at the police station? Is that the question, or?
Well, or just, do you have, like you recommend 4 energy suppliers? Do you have energy installers that you've vetted that are legitimate and stand behind their product or whatever?
There are programs like that out there. It's, I think, Solar USA or something I was familiar with when I was working as town administrator. The commission actually, before the aggregation part, had a program and a presentation, 2018?
Yeah. So
19?
we tied it to, we just recently had what we call the Button Up, which is home energy efficiency, and at that time, 2018, we partnered with Revision Energy, which does a lot of both municipal, small business, and residential installations. But they're one of dozens of solar installers. And I think what you're talking about is companies like Sunrun, which are leasing essentially the panels to the homeowner, so you're paying a discount to whatever your utility rate is at the time of signing the contract, and then it stays at that discounted rate, but it's a long-term contract that you have to pay off. So, like you said, you want to just be pretty good on the numbers there, that at the time that, right now we're at historical high utility rates, and I think a lot of folks take advantage of that to say, like, all right, well, you can offer a rate that's like this, it's going to be lower, but once, or if the utility rates and community power and other third-party options are substantially lower, it might not be as good of a return on investment. But for some folks, they don't have the capital up front to do it. It's a good option, or there's other low-interest rates that you can get through different energy programs to help pay it off. So there's a lot of options out there, and I think our Energy Commission wants to have more public outreach about some of those options in the future, so definitely stay tuned on
Yeah, much like Lester's question, it's a little bit far afield from the plan that we're talking about tonight, but it's something the commission, may explore in the future. But our bandwidth is a little bit focused right now on getting this aggregation plan developed, so, yes.
You mentioned there was a benefit to Exeter people for $40. You mentioned that Stratum could potentially have a benefit of $26. My question is, where are those funds coming from?
You observed during the presentation that Exeter was mentioned that they were saving perhaps 40% off Unitil rates. And I think the presentation was referring to the community of Enfield, which is an Eversource community. And that's why they only get 26 cents, or excuse me, 26% savings, or $26.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, dollars, I'm sorry. It's a little bit apples and oranges, but Henry, go ahead.
I'll just build on that. So Exeter got the $40 savings because they had Unitil, and Unitil's rate is actually 6 cents more than Eversource's. So, and just to be really clear, this is because right now Eversource and Unitil rates are, in this period, they're extraordinarily high, and the difference between 15.8 cent rate and Eversource's 20 cents or Unitil's 26 cents is considerable, and it amounts to a range of between $25 and $40 a month. What will change is on August 1, the Unitil and Eversource rates will change, and as will the coalitions change, and that spread might come down to some degree, but we fully expect continued savings.
So that benefit is coming from the supply side or the delivery side?
Yes, it's the supply side.
Supply side.
That's right.
Yes.
Thank you.
You said that you in entering your, figuring out your prices, you do it as a discount from the Unitil price at the time when they changed their price. Do you take into account third-party suppliers at all?
No, it's about an alternative default. So right now, Unitil and Eversource, they're the default, and we're trying to provide the mass market of customers with a lower default than the utility default. But any individual customer certainly is always welcome and encouraged to shop in the market.
Any other questions on the presentation? Yes, sir.
Of those plans that's on the board, up on the screen now, do we know which stratum will select, or is that too premature?
That's the next discussion.
And these rates will, again, they'll change on August 1, and you'll all get to see what the rate comparisons are.
You're gonna just take one and pass along. I don't know if I have enough for everyone. So if there are couples or families, you can take one and share. So now that you fully understand community power and are total experts relative to that, the plan is your model. What does Stratum want out of community power programs? And you can look at the plan, and it's on how many pages?
It's concise. I think the main body is 20, and then there are attachments.
Attachments, appendices, et cetera, et cetera. But part of that is introduction, part of that is the statutory authority, part of that is the process, part of that is what we have to comply with in terms of state law, and what the PUC requires per their rules. So I want to make it very simple for you all. Page 7 on the plan that I'm passing out is really the meat and potatoes for Stratum. And these are the objectives of the plan. And this is what we're here tonight at the public hearing. You hear from you all, and you don't necessarily have to formulate, yes, I want this tonight. We can either, accept an email to, whether it's Dave or Charlie, there's contact information on the website if you have comments or thoughts, or join us again on June 22nd. Mull this over, come back, give us your thoughts relative to these bullet points on page 7. Let me go over them real quickly. And this is where we're going to need your input as to what's your priority. Low rates. You could have a town that says, I don't care what or where the electricity is coming from. Give me the lowest dollar I can get. And if that's what everyone wants, great, that's what the plan's going to say. Everyone gets the lowest price possible. If you have a different view and you want choices, but you like the lowest rate, you have to balance that between the lowest rate and your expanded choices of renewables. Maybe they're not the cheapest, but they're still going to be cheap enough as compared to the default rate. So do you want choices? How many choices do you want? Enfield had 5 up there, I think, right? 4. You could do down to 3. You could do 6, 7, 8 if the town really wanted it. Obviously, the more deviation we have from the design plans that CPC has, there's going to be a little discussion about then why are so many towns at different rates. And it's probably going to cost more because it's going to cost more to administer. So that's a consideration. Fiscal stability. You would be willing to pay a little higher rate if you knew that rate was going to stay the same for 6 months, 9 months, maybe a year. What's your priority? Rate stability and financial reserves. Customer protections. I think we're all in support of customer protections, but especially in terms of dealing with our utilities and making sure that CPC is representing us appropriately and making appropriate policy decisions that ultimately affect the rates that they offer. Public advocacy. How much do you want the Stratum as a town, as a membership of whatever group we finally belong to, how much do you want to be advocating for newer programs in the state, be it individual community code revisions or working towards individual solar options. Cleaner local power. Do you want to go and start joining with other towns and building your own solar panel or solar farms? Community resilience. Obviously, reliability of the grid and the distribution is something that could be important or maybe very important to you all as individuals. Regional collaborations is another one. Again, do you really want to just focus on Stratum and Stratum's generating capacity, or do you want to join with other communities in the wider group into individual solar projects? And last is risk and liability. Making sure that the risks are minimized. There's always in life there's always a risk, but can we minimize that risk, particularly in terms of liability for those risks, and particularly the taxpayers. So these are the general points or objectives that have been identified both by the committee and by CPC&H as particular goals. But what emphasis you want on each is the question before you now. We'd like to have that input so that when we're finalizing the draft after the 22nd, we know we're reflective of what you all want. So, Roger.
Yeah, thanks. Roger Stevenson. It seems that fiscal stability and financial reserves ties into community resilience. Would we opt to choose a rate that allows us to save a little money so that when the technology presents itself as it is, we can put in battery backup storage, that sort of thing? Is that a possibility?
Help me, guys.
Yeah, kind of listed down here under regional collaborations, some of those types of innovations, and so I think that's
and I think we do regional collaborations with schools and emergency services already, so that makes a lot of sense.
And our conservation efforts too, you know, we've partnered with the Rockham County Conservation District and Spelt and many other regional organizations, so it's not uncommon for us to do that.
I just got, these that are listed here, is this the objectives that Stratum is submitting?
These
you
are
ask the
topics.
Individuals, I mean, because they all look good to me, but I'm trying to, as a voter, are you asking me to pick and choose something?
So we've identified these as general overarching objectives for the plan.
Okay.
But we want to know, are there others that you want to add? And if there, or even if there aren't others, do you want to weigh more heavily on one or the other? You know, forget lower rates, we want renewables as much as possible. Whatever your choice is, because it's your plan.
Sorry, just to follow up on this. I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. I have a question related to the fiscal stability and the financial reserves as well. When you're talking about maintaining a reserve fund, would that be we, the town of Stratham, doing that? Or is that open? Is this part of the collaborative that we might?
Henry can elaborate a little bit more on that, but each town will have a certain reserve for themselves, for their priorities.
Administrative, I guess that's where I'm getting at, is that it sounds like, when I started reading this list, it sounds like more people involved.
So this is really part of the purpose of the coalition, is so each individual town doesn't have to wear an administrative burden. That is all held with the coalition, this nonprofit that works for the towns. So in terms of the reserve fund, there's actually two categories. There is a joint reserve that is, it sort of funds the coalition and it keeps everybody's rates stable over time. That joint reserve is tracked so we know exactly what proportion is associated with which town's electricity sales. So we'll know which piece of our pie is the Stratum reserves, but that's held with the coalition to keep everybody's rates lower. Part of the purpose of that is in the event that down the line, maybe Stratum wants to leave the coalition for some reason, you would actually take your portion of the reserves with you. In addition to that, so that's joint reserves for everybody. In addition to that, Stratum could apply an adder to collect its own Stratum reserve fund.
In order to do some kind of funding for future development or
So
whatever.
there's sort of two layers. There's the benefit of the coalition where we're all benefiting because we're all collecting those reserves and we all have stability. And then there's each town can sort of customize within that also.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Henry, that's load based.
Yeah.
So it's the ratepayer
Right.
in their rate, a certain small portion of that will populate the reserves.
That's right. So, I mean, just like hard numbers, we are forecasting that our joint reserves at the end of 2023 will be $13 million, $12.5 million for those collective communities that CPC&H holds in joint reserves and tracks per each community.
And what percentage of that joint reserve is used for admin costs by the collaborative itself?
So the full overhead of the coalition is less than 4% of the net revenue of the company.
Right now, they have one employee.
Yeah, but there's the vendor contractors, there's legal, there's startup costs, there's financing costs. And all our budgets are on our website and all public.
Is the town required to purchase so much power from the coalition based upon population? Is there a minimum requirement?
There is no minimum, but you are the new default. So everyone that right now is getting the Unitil default, they'll get the letter and they'll get switched over unless they opt out. And we have found less than a 1% opt-out rate in those first 12 towns. And I guess it's because we're saving everybody money, so.
And correct me, like 80% of the people choose or have stayed with the default rate, right?
That's right. So maybe residential customers, maybe 1 out of 5 shops and 4 out of 5 don't.
If you're not currently a Unitil customer, are you going to find out about how this is all developing if you're with another power company or not?
You'll get the letter in the mail. It'll say all the same stuff, and there will be a piece that says if you're not a Unitil customer, if you're a third-party customer, you're not affected, but you can join if you like. So you will be informed.
Just clarify for me, these objectives which you've outlined here, would it be fair to say that based on feedback you get from the town and people show up at these meetings, that these objectives will go into the overall plan that the select board will then vote on and present at next year's town meeting. Is that roughly, is that fair? Is that?
That's fair.
Okay.
Yep. Or, even if the input was, strike public advocacy, we can strike it. There's no particular reason to state that we have to do any of these objectives. These are just objectives that have been broadly decided that are desirable and should warrant discussion.
Good, thanks.
Again, just for clarification, with respect to the different options of completely renewable or clean versus the basic or lowest rate, would the select board, or however we determine as a community, are we deciding what options our community has? Or say we choose that everybody's going to go to basic, but Joe Smith wants to do 100% renewable, would Joe have that option? Or no, because as a community, we've said we're going for basic, or?
I think there's multiple level decision trees to be made there. The first is, what does the plan suggest? What are your priorities? So that's going to be the guiding document for the selectmen after a town meeting vote that says yay or nay whether we're going to go with those priorities. Who will then work with whatever vendor we decide to go with as a provider to come up with service tiers that are available. And then as I understood, one of those service tiers is going to be designated by the selectmen as the default rate. But you'll still be able to choose the other rates that are available within the community. So you're going to have more choice, because right now Unitil just gives you the default rate, sorry. Go look for you, go fend for yourself.
A different one, but then you said something about the ones we choose, and I just wasn't sure if somebody, if we were limiting our.
Thank you for letting me clarify that.
Yeah, so this plan will be presented to the selectmen for them to approve, right? It's not like an individual, because.
No, this plan needs to go to this.
Give me the cheapest rate.
Yeah.
And we need to go out and educate all these people what these things mean, so.
Yeah. Basically, this is to guide them on how to create the rate structure. Fair enough?
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Is Unitil or the New Hampshire Public Utilities making any comments that we should be aware of?
Well, that's a good thing you asked that, because I wasn't sure if it was clear process-wise. We're having this hearing, and then we're having a hearing on June 22nd. Between June 22nd and the July 11th meeting of the Energy Commission, the Commission and the Aggregation Committee will finalize the final draft of the plan. That will then immediately go to the Select Board. The Select Board is anticipating it on their July 31st meeting for initial approval. The reason the July 31st date is so important is we need to then send the draft plan to the PUC for their approval to see if it meets all those requirements. And they take up to 60 days to do that review. So then we're into October. Sometime between August and September, the Board of Selectmen has considered possibly having a special town meeting in October to consider the plan. By that time, the plan will be approved by the PUC. It'll be ready for your review. The reason for the special town meeting, because A, there's no dollar value involved, so there's no need to go to court and get a ruling. We can call any special town meeting for an appropriate cause that the board feels appropriate. But in order to allow for the next rate-setting wave of towns, which is anticipated to occur in April of 2024, if we waited to March town meeting of 2024, we might miss that window. And therefore, we'd be another perhaps 6 months before we could have a lower rate for you. So that's kind of the considerations that are involved right at the moment. We haven't definitely said we're having a special town meeting. That, again, that's up to the Board of Selectmen. But they've said that they would consider it. You had a question here or a comment?
Yeah, those people on net metering that have solar power are not eligible for this program at this time. Is there a time frame when they can put the pieces together so we can become eligible?
I'm hopeful by the April 2024 that will be resolved. Henry can tell you that the coalition has been approaching the PUC about this issue.
Unfortunately, it's not a hard timeline, but I can't say specifically when that will be resolved, but we're actively working on resolving it at the public utilities.
It's obviously an abrogation of their responsibility under the statute, but the statute doesn't necessarily contemplate all the ins and outs and complications involved in a massive computer program that needs to filter out all the data as necessary. So
we can assume the PUC is going to contact Unitil?
Yeah, this is all, there are filings and regulatory process, and that's beginning at the Public Utility Commission, yes.
We're pushing it as hard as possible, yes. Yes.
Can commercial customers participate, or is it only residential?
There's a size limitation, but
commercial customers can participate. The largest class, the industrial scale, maybe manufacturing scale, they would not be automatically enrolled. But yeah, any typical residential customer will participate the same as a residential customer.
I'll use the example of Lint. Lint is on Eversource because that's on that side of town in the industrial park. That's the utility that ended up with that corner. Lint is one of Eversource's largest customers. So they've already had the ability to negotiate their rates at a very significant cost savings. So they don't really need the community power concept. They probably already benefited from their own load. Sure. So, I think I was getting the hook. But can we have a few more comments and before we wrap this up? But it is important, again, if you don't get a chance or you don't know what to ask or comment on tonight, send an email to any of the contacts that are on the website or come back and talk to us on the June 22nd. Roger, and then...
Yeah, well, I just want to say I'm very grateful that people like you, Paul, and Henry, and the rest of this committee are involved, because I've worked with each of you before, and this is, you got my vote.
There you go, right? All right.
But I do, run down, and this is one reason why the trust is so strong. You ran down those lists of dates. Run them down one more time, and which ones we should be a part of.
Tonight?
Yep.
June 22nd?
Okay.
Which is the next hearing. July 11th, which is the last meeting in which the Energy Commission and the Aggregation Committee will meet to finalize the draft. July 31st, select board meeting. And then something will happen after that, depending on how everything washes out. Mike?
That draft will be on the website.
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow. But as we're going through and we're talking, getting the input, is that a working process? Will things be changing? Is there a way that people know? I went through it once. Now there has been changes. What are the changes?
Right.
Is there something that we're putting into place?
We probably won't make any changes until our next meeting in June. If there are any, then that revision will go up. I don't know, do you think do we keep the original revision, or do
We
we?
could probably have red line.
Red line
changes,
versions, right.
And, so that way you can see, so right now the draft is currently posted on the Energy Aggregation Committee website. So feel free to look at that and all of these that you see on page 7.
And can we turn around after the July 11th, our meeting, can we say final draft that's going to the select board?
Absolutely. So it has to be.
So the people will know that they're looking, they've given us their input, we heard them, and we incorporated it into what we're going to present. to the select board.
Yeah.
That all, we're all in agreement?
With all due respect to the amount of work you guys have done, which is incredible, outside of the 40-some odd people who sat here tonight, how are you going to get the word out to folks? Because I got to tell you, if they get a letter that says here's your default rate, and they don't go to town meeting, as we know most of them don't, that's going to be a tough sell, guys. It's going to be a very tough sell. Because I can tell you, when I came here tonight, I was thinking, I'm not sure about this. I'm going to go find out about it. There's a lot of people in this town who are going to look at it and go, whoa, hold on, what's going on here? Who's picking my pocket now? How are we going to get the word out? How are we going to educate the town? How are we going to get them on board? What's the plan for that?
Obviously, that's a challenge for any town decision. Not the bloody noses, but just think of the trash collection process that we went through a couple of years ago. And there were still people who said, why did this bucket show up on my front doorstep? But anyhow, we'll make every attempt by any vehicle. We put it on the website. We've had it on the town's Facebook site. Many members then shared it to other Facebook sites that they're members of. We've reached out to groups like the 76ers and trying to meet with them. You know, we haven't really fleshed out the entire communication plan just yet because we don't know what we're communicating. But I imagine, you know, if an opportunity will present itself to go to the fire department, let's say, or a library forum, we'll make every attempt. I won't say it'll be 100% successful because I've been around long enough to know that it isn't. But you try your best and talk to your neighbors. You're the best people to get the word out. Tomorrow at the bus stop or wherever you happen to see your neighbor. Talk about, hey, I was at this meeting last night. Sounds like a great plan. They're the meeting again June 22nd. Come on down. Let's maybe we'll go down to locals afterward. Not locals, the tailgate afterward. But whatever gets people out and about. We hope to use it in some fashion. Thank you.
Just to quickly follow up with him. The whole purpose of this is to get lower rates. And do we know, is that a given, that we will get a lower rate? We just don't know what percentage? Do we have some gut?
The plan requires you cannot launch unless you have a lower rate.
I mean, that one sentence alone, going to every person in Stratham, is going to say, sign me up. Okay, if we can back up that we're guaranteeing you, going in this program, you will get a lower rate.
I mean, also just make the quick observation. Ever since CPC, I don't know why I can't get that acronym right out. You needed something that rolled off the tongue. Ever since they've started their programs, many third-party suppliers have suddenly dropped their rates. So competition is good. And so even if you don't choose the community power option, you might have better options just because of the competition.
Well, why can't we use the average rates of the ones that are already in?
Because we're a default.
I'm just saying,
yeah.
Percentage of 30 towns, and on average, each town got a minimum reduction of 15%. I mean, something like that.
I think, and Henry, of course, bailed on me. I think it's because it's a default rate, it has to be comparable to the default rate Unitil offers. You can't use those blended rates.
Okay, but I'm just saying.
I understand the question.
Already started this?
Yes.
Okay, my daughter is on full electric base board. She had $1,000 monthly bills. She could probably talk to the community if they could get a lower rate.
Sure. They just launched, so you probably haven't seen it in their bill yet.
I was just going to say that use the library also for information. Whether you have somebody sitting in there or if you have handouts, like you ask the librarians to hand out information, you're going to get people that will read it talk about it, and you'll see that it will really help with
And I'll just say, the coalition does support, like, a lot of communities have been through this. We have template materials, frequently asked questions, handouts, and work with the committee and the town to really do what we can to build a plan and get the word out.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much for all coming. And if we see you on the 22nd, all the better. Thank you.